Good evening. I will call this regular meeting of council to order Tuesday, February 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chamber. This meeting is being live streamed on the town's YouTube page. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we are gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. I'll begin this meeting by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
And I will be declaring a conflict of interest with regards to item 6.2.2, the community grants. I am a member of the Kinsman and the Kinsman Summerfest chair, so at that time I will be passing the chair to Councillor Luna to preside over that discussion, and I will refrain from adding to the discussion or voting. So, next we will look at the agenda. Any issues with the agenda, folks? All right, with that, I will seek recommendation that the February 24th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as presented. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Craigmile, second. Councillor Luna, all in favor? That is carried. Next, we'll move on to our public input period, and I will ask the clerk, do we have anything we've received tonight?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Alward. There is a piece of correspondence. It is before you this evening, Council, but for the purpose of public record, it is the following correspondence. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on item 8.17 on the February 24th, 2026 Council agenda regarding an update of the West Quarry project. The pillars at the West Quarry represent an important part of our industrial past, and they are a significant reminder of the role the quarry played and continues to play in our town. The redevelopment of the West Quarry is an exciting initiative, and having the pillars as part of the plans will help to enhance the area. I feel that the fencing plan outlined in the report is a good solution. The cost to taxpayers is a prudent investment as it helps to retain this unique structure. I therefore encourage Council to adopt option 3 and move forward with the fencing with pillars. Thank you for considering my input. I very much appreciate the work that staff has done to address the concerns outlined by the delegation that I was part of last November. Sincerely, Laurie Leduc.
All right, that is all we have received. So I will move on to the acceptance of the minutes. First, we have the regular council February 10th, 2026. Any issues with those minutes, folks? All right, I will seek recommendation that the February 10th, 2026 regular council meeting minutes be approved by council. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Pridham, second. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And we'll move on to the 6.2 Strategic Priorities Committee, February 17th, 2026. So first, we have a recommendation that the February 17th, 2026 Strategic Priorities Committee minutes be received by council and that minute items 4.1 and 4.2 be raised for consideration. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Luna, second. Councillor Edney, all in favor? It's carried. All right, so with regards to the transit needs assessment, we have a recommendation that council supports the recommendation of Dillon Consulting to modify PC Connect by shortening Route 2 to only run between Stratford and Kitchener and adjusting Route 3 to accommodate an increased number of fixed route in-town stops, and that council supports a joint Ontario Transportation Investment Fund application with the City of Stratford, Municipality of North Perth, and Municipality of West Perth to implement the service enhancements recommended for PC Connect. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Pridham, second. Councillor Edney, any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. So next we will begin our community grants discussion, and the CAO, I believe, had comments to offer before this.
Yep, so thank you through the Deputy Mayor. Council, just to close the loop on this, there are two separate recommendations in this minute item, one being related to increasing the United Way funding by the cost of living adjustment approved by the town, which would start in 2027. And then last week at our meeting, we committed that when we brought this back and raised it to council, we give you the opportunity to see each of the individual amounts for the grants you approved after you gave us direction to prorate. So I know Mr. Steckley is on the line and he's prepared to share his screen so that both council and the public can see the funding amounts assigned to each of the applicants that were deemed eligible. So I'll leave it to Spencer to share his screen, or Jenna. I think Jenna's going to share the numbers. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I think the recommendation is to deal with the resolution related to the United Way, and then we'll do the screen share after that.
Yep. Okay, so we have a recommendation that council implement an annual increase to United Way Perth Huron funding based on the annual cost of living allowance beginning in 2027. Someone want to move that motion? Councillor Edney, second. Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Councillor Luna, please.
Just a clarification on that. So it's still the $1.50 per census plus cost of living, just to be clear. Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, before we begin the next discussion on the standing community grants, I will pass the chair to Councillor Luna to lead that discussion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the recommendation is there. We're going to hear from Spencer. Oh, we've got Spencer there now. So we're just going to go through them, the list. Is that, sorry? Okay. Okay. So the recommendation is that council approves the following amounts for the 2026 standing community grants. Canada Day Parade, $3,000. Community Dinner, $1,500. St. Michael's, $750. St. Mary's DCVI, $1,500. Station Gallery, $10,000. United Way Perth Huron, $11,079. That council approves the following amounts for the 2026 application-based community grants. Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, $2,000. And that staff are directed to prorate the remaining community grant funds per the policy to the following eligible applicants as determined by the Strategic Priorities Committee on February the 17th, 2026. Giving Tuesday, St. Mary's, Goals, Kaswantha, 2 Row Now, Kinsman Club of St. Mary's, Rotary Club of St. Mary's, Royal Canadian Legion Perth Regiment, St. Mary's Farmers Market, St. Mary's Horticultural Society, St. Mary's Imagination Library, St. Mary's Lincoln Junior Hockey Club, St. Mary's Ringette Association, Stonetown Quilters Guild and Huron Perth Quilters Guild, Teddy Bear Reunion, Terry Fox Foundation, to St. Mary's with Love. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion to get it on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded by Councillor Lucas. All in favor? To get the discussion, to get it on the floor. Okay, right, okay. So any discussion? Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, Councillor Luna. I had more thought after our meeting last Tuesday, and Councillor Pridham and I had some ongoing discussion during the meeting and after, and I got thinking about what's equitable and what's fair, and I don't think the two are the same. So my problem even during the meeting and after the meeting was, if we prorate everybody, which would be the equitable option, is that fair to everybody? And I was struggling with a way to come up to put this into a policy that, again, keeps it fair amongst everybody and gives us something, a framework to work off of, as opposed to going line by line to determine which group is more important than the other, because I think that becomes a slippery slope. But my biggest problem was, for example, the two that stick out to me was the Terry Fox Foundation looking for $200. That $200 to that organization, again, it was in kind, I believe, for picnic tables, really is fairly significant for their organization, because it's not a huge thing. The other one was the Horticultural Society looking for $650 to plant flowers on our property to beautify our town, and we're going to reduce them by $200. So to me, and I don't know where everybody would feel about this, but my thought was, if somebody's asking for a smaller amount, and I'm gonna say under $1,000, and we feel it fits into the parameters of our program, I think we adopt or we give them the full funding if they're under $1,000. If their ask is over $1,000, that's where maybe we come in and prorate it, because generally the organizations that have come in over $1,000 are fairly significant or bigger clubs. So again, not to say that they're less important or more important, because that becomes a very slippery slope. My thought is they probably have the funds and the means, if they're asking for a significant amount, to offset any kind of proration from the town, whereas an organization, again, I come back to the Horticultural Society, for $652, that $180 that we're unable to fund them, I would say would be a significant contribution for them. So I don't know where, and I'm just throwing that on the floor, but I just thought I was struggling with what's equitable and what's fair, and I think it's two different things. So I'll leave it at that, but that's kind of where my head's going on this.
Councillor Pridham?
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. As you know, I am also struggling with and feel that there needs to be some adjustments to this particular allocation. Maybe we can look at changing the policy a little bit to allow for that in the next iteration of grants. So what I'm looking at is an extra $851.62 added to the total, and that would give the Terry Fox Run their $200, and it would give the Horticultural Society their $652. It would give Giving Tuesday, who I feel does a very valuable and good service in the town, and their promotion is outstanding, and that's what they're asking for. I believe the majority of it was for promotion. So $871.62, their full amount. The other one I feel strongly about, and it's up to council, of course, to decide, is the Keswenta Two Row Now, because they are an education piece for Indigenous peoples within Huron and Perth County, and they do good work. I don't believe that we're not out there doing that work every day. We do it on occasion, but they're doing the work every day, and the ask to me doesn't seem to be unreasonable with the amount that they do. So $1,388. The total change would be $851.62 added to our grant total. So I would, I guess, ask that we could make an amendment to the recommendation.
Councillor Craigmore?
Thank you, Councillor Luna. I can't say anything negative against what my colleagues have already said, because they make very valid points. I'd like to remind everybody that at this time a year ago, we did strike a committee to look at the policy and come up with some revisions, and that didn't happen. So I do believe that in order to make these sort of decisions, I think we have to somehow first change the policy. Now that we are talking about them, though, I do believe last year we talked about strategic priorities, and that was the, I don't know how it kind of slipped through, but we did talk briefly about the Ringette Association grant that is still listed there. And I do believe there was discussions last year, and I'm sure the CAO will correct me or chime in to get the exact remarks, but we talked about minor sports and getting equipment, and I'm really concerned that we're just not reopening a large can of worms and whatnot. So I'm all for striking that part, but I don't know what we can do about picking and choosing when we haven't changed the policy.
Yep, I can speak to, so I guess at a general level, my advice is always the policy is council, so it provides you the framework, but if you wish to approve exceptions, you do that through your resolutions. In some years, in fairness to all the staff who've done the work and in fairness to council, the method of getting we've always been pretty consistent on getting ourselves down to the total budget amount. We've rarely oversubscribed the program. There were certain years where the approach to proration was taken differently. So I remember a few years ago, proration was done as if your grant was within a certain range, you got a third of your grant. If it was in another range, you got 2/3 of your grant, so or something like that. Last year, we didn't prorate at all. Last year, council just actually truly just struck people from the list and said that's how we're going to get ourselves down. To Councillor Craigmile's point, last year, a decision was made by council that no minor sports organization was going to receive a grant because they couldn't demonstrate financial need because all of them had fairly sufficient bank accounts. So last year, that meant St. Mary's Minor Basketball, St. Mary's Minor Soccer, St. Mary's Minor Ringette, and St. Mary's Minor Hockey were all denied a grant. So that may have factored in why none of those organizations applied again this year. But again, I leave it to you. We've never really had a consistent basis on how we got down to the number. Some years we decide to go, this is what Spencer has done here today is exactly what the policy describes you do, is you prorate it based on the amount that they've asked for so that everybody gets this proportionate share, the same proportionate share of their original ask. But that's just one way that it's done in the policy. So it's your decision. And again, you always have that option of saying, we want to change these around. We want to, delete one or two from this. We want to add some others, and we approve staff to run the variance in it if it's a tolerable variance for you as well. That's always a third option. You can oversubscribe the budget by a few $1,000s, many $1,000s, a few $100s if you wish.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like to amend the motion to say that we strike the Ringette Association off the grant list.
So just write it as an amendment to that motion? It doesn't have to write the whole thing. I have a question for Councillor Lucas, if I could. So under your suggestion, anything less than $1,000 would be an automatic yes. But Councillor Pridham has brought forth Casuantha 2-row now at $1,388, so that doesn't fit into that parameter. So how do we, Councillor Pridham?
I would be amiable to leave that number where it is and consider the ones below 1,000 and top them up to where they get their full amount. And then the remainder, because there would be a slight remainder, then would be prorated amongst the others. I could do a resolution for that if you like. On the same paper, you mean? No. Okay. Oh, there's a pad of paper. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Craigmile has an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Read it again.
That we remove the Ringette Association from the acceptable grants and do not prorate any grants below $1,000 in value.
Okay, so we have this amendment to the motion that's on the floor. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the amendment? Councillors Lucas and Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Hand the gavel back to Deputy Mayor Alward. No? For what?
Councillor Luna, you now have, your main motion has been amended. I am prepared to print that out for you in just a moment, but we're going to ask Mr. Steckley to show on the screen what that amount looks like. He's just working on the math, so if you could bear with us for a moment. To recap, you are removing the $649 that was requested from Ringette. You are then increasing Giving Tuesday to $871.62. You are increasing the Horticultural Society to $652. You are increasing Terry Fox Foundation to $200. So I believe that's what we've heard. Mr. Steckley is just working on those formulas, and he'll share his screen in a moment so you see what that outcome is and how that changes the prorating. If council would indulge staff, while you didn't initially put the dollar value for each of those items in the motion, if the original mover and seconder would agree, we'd like to include that in the final motion so it is expressly clear what those numbers are. And once Mr. Steckley shows it on the screen, I will print out your motion so that you have the updated version before you.
Sorry for the delay. I've now updated the prorations for the remaining grants, and those have been hopefully shared on your screen.
And just a question, Mr. Steckley, the amount that we are working under is the 28,171, or is, oh no, now you got a different amount there.
I'm
So
not sure
is
what
there-
happened there. Jenna, did you just change something?
Yeah,
Not intentionally, not intentionally.
Oh, okay.
but the 28,171 is the amount that we're right on the number with that number, right? Correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Mr. Steckley, do you mind if I stop sharing your screen and put up the proposed motion on the screen?
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
So just a question to the clerk. We have a motion on the floor with the amendment that is, both have a mover and a seconder, but now this is a new a new motion.
To Councillor Luna, you had a main motion. There is a mover and seconder. There's been an amendment to your main motion. It has been approved. The document before you in paper, the one that I'm going to put on the screen in just a moment, includes the amendment to the main motion, so it is now your main motion with the amendment. It is as it stands that we are asking for you to make your vote upon. That's someone. Counselor Luna, you do have a mover to that. That was Counselor Edney for your main motion, and Counselor Lucas seconded that main motion. So you do have a mover and seconder. You're just looking to call it to question.
Any discussion on this new, on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. And I will now pass the gavel back to.
Thank you, Councillor Luna. I appreciate that. All right, folks, now that we've made it out of the minutes, we will begin staff reports. We'll begin with Admin 06-2026, the February monthly report for administration. That'll be Mr. Kittmer, please.
Okay, so thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm just going to touch on a few very brief things in my monthly report. So last meeting, we did have our update on 14 Church Street. So I'm just, again, reminding council that the next touch point will be March 10th, where Ms. Andrews will bring forward the fundraising plan for council to consider as it's been developed by a subcommittee of the Library Board and the Library Board. We'll also present that night several letters of support from City of Stratford Social Services, Canadian Mental Health Association, and HPPH. I will also just share that Sarah has begun work to start contacting service clubs as the next group of groups, organizations, and individuals that she seeks out the possibility of supporting the project. We've had meaningful discussions with 2 service clubs that have shown some genuine interest. So I do hope to have a further report for that March 10th meeting as well. In terms of the transit needs assessment, we are now moving forward quickly on considering the development of an OTIF application. So Dylan has been brought on board to help out the City of Stratford with the application to the province, as well as to help us craft language on how to better split costs as the project moves forward. So I'm hopeful that you'll see something in the next few months where I can report back and say we've submitted a grant, and then we would find out likely late summer whether or not that grant's successful. The only other thing I wanted to share, Jenna said she didn't have many material updates in her section. Just simply a reminder that for anybody who's watching, and again, anybody in the room that might be interested in being a candidate in next year's election, the first information session is tomorrow night in the End Zone from 6 to 9 o'clock. That's everything on my monthly report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the CAO tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'll seek a recommended motion that Admin 06-2026 February monthly report administration be received. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Edney, second. Councillor Craigmile. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. All right, next is Admin 07-2026 funding agreement with the City of Stratford for community outreach. Mr. Kittmer, please.
So thank you, Deputy Mayor. So really just a housekeeping report. Year over year, I've brought forward a memorandum of understanding with the City of Stratford that governs how they provide their contribution to our community outreach program. This year, they've changed the format of the funding agreement to be a multi-year letter of agreement. So what you see attached in tonight's agenda is just establishing the terms and conditions by which they will give the town money to offset the cost of community outreach. The term is now 3 years rather than 1, and funding will be conditional on ensuring that they get it from the province to then flow through to the town. The good news is that the funding amount is now increased to $50,000 from $30,000, and there's a wider range of types of expenses that they'll fund. So not in the past they just fund direct wage costs, where now we can build in certain administration costs as well, like technology and whatnot. So it's a really good thing for our program. It'll bounce us up to an additional $20,000. The only thing it may do is it may reduce the amount we get from the United Way, because we have to report any new funding streams to the United Way as part of our supportive partner agreement with them. So it may end up balancing out anyway, so it's still roughly a third, just with a bigger share of the third coming from Stratford now, and less coming from United Way. And that's to be expected. The United Way's funding is always conditional on how successful local campaigns are. So we have seen reduced amounts from them in the last couple of years. So this is what I truly think is happening. Is the City of Stratford is just making sure that we're made whole.
All right, any questions from council? All right, seeing none, I will seek recommendation that Report Admin 07-2025 funding agreement with the City of Stratford for community outreach be received, and that council approves a 3-year agreement with the City of Stratford for funding for the town's community outreach worker position. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councilor Pridham, second. Councilor Lucas. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. All right, next up is the Building and Development February Monthly Report. Mr. Brower, please.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Deputy Mayor. You'll see my report in front of you. Excuse me, a couple things I probably want to highlight. During at the time of the report, we're unable to release addresses for certain applications that we're receiving. I knew by the time we would have council that I'd be able to talk about some of those addresses. So when you take a look at my planning files that I do have on the go, the first one would be 556 Emily Street. They're going to be applying for minor grants for a reduction or for going on the height. They're building an accessory building, and they require more height because of the size of the accessory building. The other one on South Service Road, that'd be 100 South Service Road. They're going to they're applying for consent to separate it into three different parcels total. And the last one would be 446 Queen Street East, where they're going to have a ZBA, zoning bylaw amendment, to permit a residential unit. So those mailings will be coming out later this week, deeming not only the application is complete, but also talking about when the meeting dates are, when the 2 meeting dates are, because one's on our Planning Advisory Committee and the other one's under Committee of Adjustment. The other one is a good news item is that the town / the building department was approached by CTV News. And we were on the news last night talking about our housing videos. So they are getting great uptake. I am hearing lots of great feedback. So interesting discussion when you're talking with somebody from outside the corporation, when they're taking a look in and some of the things that we're doing, very innovative, and how council is giving direction to staff moving forward a lot of these strategic items to make sure that we people have a place to live, and looking at creative forms of housing. That's all I have on my open to any questions council may have.
All right, any questions from council? Councilor Craigmile.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Grant, I did have one question, and it was on your facilities capital, where you listed that the paint palette for upstairs in the auditorium, you're dealing with the community players. Now, when we did the town hall renovations, are any of the people on that team still involved because they did such a great job?
Through the deputy mayor to Councilor Craigmile, the quick answer is no. But we can if needed to. But there was no direction at the time that there was nothing talked about at that time. That project was a little different because we did have input when we're talking about the configuration of the room and how everything else was going to flow beyond that. Staff felt that probably it wasn't required this time, but we're open to it if council gives that direction.
I only brought it up because I have zero expertise and I couldn't offer anything, but I do believe the 2 ladies involved in the design and paint palettes down here did an excellent job. So I think that their input would be helpful, at least to consult them with your final touches.
Duly noted, through Deputy Mayor, duly noted. To be fair, it's not us that picks the colors either. We do have an expert that does come in with us and does help us with those colors. So it is not Mr. Cousineau, it is not myself picking those colors, because we're probably in the same boat as you, Councilor Craigmile.
Okay, thank you.
But I understand that, from what I understand, talking to Mr. Cousineau, he has used some similar colors because they're tying everything in together from downstairs to upstairs. But we can run past those 2 councilors that sat on the committee. So,
Councilor Pridham.
Oops, I'll just add my little bit of input. I've been chatting with the people upstairs that are involved in the color selection, And I've seen what they've picked, and I believe that it is something similar to what we've got down here. It's absolutely fine. It'll be good.
All right. Any other questions from council? Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Grant, just two comments. Number one, yeah, the videos I've watched have been really well done. So kudos to you and your department and everybody involved in that. I thought they were really well done and gave a broad spectrum. So if anybody's out there that hasn't seen them that's watching, I would totally recommend it. My next just comment or question is, I saw the stair rebuild project, you had 14 vendors out looking at that project. That seems like a lot of vendors for a very niche project. I just wondered if kind of what your thoughts were on that.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councilor Lucas, one of two things generally happen on those projects so either one or two things happen. Either people feel it's too complex and they walk away, or people will subcontract and provide prices too because they don't want to take the project on. They don't have all the qualifications, meaning the insurance and all the other things that are required. And usually we see people partnering up. I will be surprised if we get six tenders in on that, based on the complexity of the project that's required.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, I will seek a recommended motion that DEV 06-2026 February monthly report, building and development, be received. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councilor Craigmile, second. Councilor Pridham, any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the February monthly report, culture, tourism, and engagement. Ms. Copperly joins us in person tonight.
All right, thank you for having me in person tonight. So just a couple of things to highlight from the past month or so in the Department of Culture, Tourism, and Engagement. So in cultural services, we've applied for our same 3 seasonal grant positions that we always apply for. So 2 for the summer, and then 1 for an internship position to get us through the fall and winter. Our interim curator and archivist has moved into that role on a continuing basis. So recruitment is underway to backfill the assistant curator role, as well as our 2 summer student roles. We're kind of in the thick of recruitment right now at the museum. We held our Heritage Fair this past Friday evening at the Pyramid Recreation Center, and we saw 223 people through our facility that evening. So we try to hold it in conjunction with a Lincoln's home game, and they do a really great job of helping to announce it during intermission. And so we had a steady parade of folks through during first intermission. I understand that parking was a challenge that evening with so many people in the facility, but it's great to see it so busy. In terms of economic development and tourism, just an update on the 2 confirmed and 1 tentative business that our economic development and tourism manager have been supporting. So that's now 3 confirmed new businesses moving into our downtown, which is really exciting. And then we've been working with the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. So they're hosting a number of tournaments this summer. And due to the volume of teams they're hosting, they will be using Milt Dunnell Field. So we're looking at that as an opportunity if there's going to be 50-plus teams in St. Mary's and in proximity to our downtown. How do we work with the BIA to make sure that they reap the benefits of those additional folks in the downtown? And then it didn't quite make it into the report, but the visitor's guide has gone to print and may be distributed as early as later this week. And then we're also in the thick of Heritage Festival planning, so we're getting lots of applicants for the vendor fair, which is exciting. It was kind of a status quo month for the train station, and also a busy but kind of status quo month for communications. So through the Deputy Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Ms. Cupperly tonight? Councilor Pridham, please.
Yes, please, Your Worship. Just a question about communications. You've got a nice list there of things, and I'm wondering on ongoing projects, is the Library Fundraising Committee part of the media releases for? Yes. Okay. So that. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, I will seek a motion that DCS 02-2026, February monthly report, community services be received. Oh, no, I've skipped it. Sorry. Yes, culture, tourism, and engagement. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Luna. Second. Councillor Lucas. All in favor? It's carried. All right, next up is community services. Ms. Ishii, please.
Good evening. All right, I'll do a brief update on our monthly report. The air quality in the pool is very good from a facilities perspective. I just wanted to update everybody. We did do our grand opening in January, which was really successful. We're still working through a few deficiencies with the pool that we will continue to work on, and hopefully we'll have those rectified as soon as possible. I wanted to update everybody on the blue rink leak that we had just the past couple of weeks. So we have fixed as much as we possibly can. We currently have rain diverter tarps with hoses to manage any future leaks up there. As of today, the leaks have slowed down. Staff are going to reassess the in the spring, and as part of the roofing project, we will continue to look at that. So things look okay. We've shoveled all of this snow off the roof. We've done the little patches that we can, and we think we're in better shape right now. So that's just a little bit of an update. From an aquatics perspective, we are planning for our triathlon again this summer, which will be on Sunday, July the 5th this year. Registration is already open, and we do anticipate that we will have a lot more participants than we did the previous year. Each year, these tend to grow. So we do think we're going to get a lot more this next year. Speaking of registrations that are open, we have opened our registration for our summer camps. So through childcare and through the recreation department, all of our summer camps are open. And along with that is our registration for next before and after school program next September for the 2026-2027 year. I hate to say that we're moving that far along, but we do open up registration rather early so we can get people registered into those programs. I did let council know that there has been a change with our childcare summer program this year. So we will be hosting our childcare summer program out of Little Falls. Little Falls has been exceptionally helpful this year, so we were allowed to offer that program at that school due to some capital projects that would be happening at Holy Name. So it will be maybe challenging for some families because there might be multiple drop-offs, but that was the best that we could do for this summer. So there are a number of children that come to that program, so we wanted to make sure that we would still be able to offer it. Another opportunity, so another unique opportunity that has kind of just fallen in our lap is from a sports tourism perspective is the Ontario Shuffleboard Association has reached out and is looking to host a 3-day tournament in September with the Friendship Center. So this will be another unique opportunity from a sports tourism perspective. Shuffleboard is actually quite a rising activity, and there's a lot of individuals that do travel around Ontario to play similar to pickleball. So it's one of those activities that we want to be able to host, and we're going to be hosting it in the Lynn Sportsplex before it is turned back over to the curling club. The Strongest Stone citizen recognition will be coming out in early March, so I just wanted to get that out there so everybody's aware of that. Senior Services continues to apply for grants for food insecurity initiatives that we have. So we've had some more funding that we've been able to use for the snack program, and additionally, funds are utilized to help support subsidies for clients that maybe can't afford meals or foot care. So we've been trying to keep an eye out for individuals that need those services within our community. And those are my brief updates. If anybody has any questions, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Ishii? All Alrighty, well, seeing none, I will seek recommendation that DCS 02-2026, February monthly report, community services be received. Somebody willing to move that motion? Counselor Edney, second Counselor Luna. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. All right, we'll move on to the lawn bowling lease agreement, and that is Ms. Ishii again, please.
Okay, perfect. So the town has maintained a longstanding lease agreement with the Parks Lawn Bowling Association. This report updates our lease and to our new lease that we're looking to update with this group. This updated 10-year lease is strategically aligned with the town's recreation priorities and our Rec Culture Leisure Master Plan initiative. So our previous lease agreements were 5 years with this association. However, keeping in line with our curling club lease, we're looking to expand this lease to a 10-year lease agreement, which would be, we're trying to make them as similar as we can. I know there are some unique nuances with each of the lease agreements, but just wanted to align it. So we've aligned it with that. The other thing we've also updated within the lease is it formalizes the club's ability to operate under the recently obtained liquor license. So the club did receive a liquor license late in 2025 last year. So we wanted to update all of the verbiage within the agreement that speaks to what is required under the AGCO and what would be required under our facility that we would allow them to do and what needs to happen there. So I'm looking for approval for this updated 10-year lease agreement as it aligns with our commitment to inclusive, sustainable recreation, and it aligns with our Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan. I'll turn it over for any questions.
Okay, any questions on this, folks? Counselor Pridham.
I was just curious about the town will pay reasonable cost to maintain the greens. This includes, but not limited to, cutting the grass, fertilizer, and topping. So we're paying the club $2,500 and they're maintaining the whole space. So that's our payment for that service. Is that the idea?
Correct. So we pay them to maintain the lawn bowling greens that they play on themselves, not the space around. It's been a legacy agreement that's been in place for many, many years. And they have the equipment, their specialized equipment for that lawn bowling space as well. So yes, that is what has been the legacy agreement.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I will seek a recommended motion that DCS 03-2026 lawn bowling lease agreement report be received, and that council approves the lease agreement with the Parks Lawn Bowling Club as proposed in DCS 03-2026 lawn bowling lease agreement. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Counselor Pridham, second. Counselor Edney. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Next, we'll move on to the Racket Courts expansion report. Ms. Ishii, please.
Okay. I'm going to go through a little bit of a background. So we did talk about the racket courts and had an ad hoc committee for a period of time. So this report is coming back to council to summarize where we are to date and what's happened up until this point. So this report provides an overview of what we've currently done. So we've completed the upgrades at the racket courts facility as based on council's recommendations. We've done the painting, we've done the roll-on nets, and then we did the collaboration with the racket courts ad hoc committee, and that's where we are today. So a bit of background just to refresh everyone's memory. In 2024, the town did update the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan, and it was formally adopted in January 2025. So the consultants at that time did examine all of our racket courts location and the activities that we have in this community, along with the members that participate in the general population, because it is an open court for individuals to use. At that time, they did make 4 recommendations based on their review, and they were brought before council within the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan. In January of 2025, Council did pass a resolution directing staff to implement Recommendation 33, which was one of the recommendations to paint the courts at that time because that was the easiest one. The other recommendations within the plan were long-term, looking for space to expand, all of those types of ideas at that point. However, prior to confirming this resolution, council did receive feedback from the tennis community, and at that time, their recommendation was that recommendation 33 should be reconsidered. So we should consider whether we repaint extra lines on the tennis courts, on the tennis side of the facility, because there was concern about that. In response to their request, at the January 28th meeting, 2025, council established an ad hoc committee. At that time, the ad hoc committee was charged with meeting and coming up with maybe what we could look at moving forward and what things could, how we could expand or what changes we could make based on what was already laid out in the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan and other ideas maybe that tennis and pickleball might have that we could come up with some different ideas at that point. We did have 2 ad hoc committees last February 2025, and the committee did come up with a couple of recommendations, asked staff to come back with some reports and some information, which we did. So we collected as much information as we could. We came back to the committee and presented those in February of last year. We came back with a couple of short-term options like repainting. Longer term was to expand Water Street, which was one of the recommendations from the committee. And then after considering the report, the ad hoc did make the following recommendation back to council, which was to proceed with the original recommendation 33 as laid out in the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan. So ultimately, the committee made the selection to move forward with the original recommendation after we did go through all of that. So at that time, we then met with council and presented that to council and laid everything out as to where we were at that time with the committee. Council did receive that report, and at that time, the recommendation was to do the painting, which was recommendation number 32 of the extra lines on the courts, buy the extra roll-on tennis nets, which has already been completed, and then re-meet with the committee and see if there were ideas that we could come up with for an expansion at the existing Water Street location. So since that time, staff have met with the ad hoc committee. We've looked and collaborated with the committee to develop a series of detailed options and layouts for future expansion at that existing site. So those plans that we came up with are attached to your report, and there are 3, or your package tonight, there are 3 draft plans that we did present to the committee. These were prepared with careful consideration of the site, including placement of utilities, other essential services to ensure feasibility and minimize disruption. So we looked at where the trail was, we looked at where all the utilities were and just how that might look at that time. Once that was drafted, we then presented back to the committees for their feedback, and in turn, then they took to their committees. So they took the layouts back to their groups as well. We were thinking the next steps in the process from there would be that we would take it to Upper Thames to determine what approvals and permitting requirement would be needed if we were to move forward with a project such as this with an expansion at the Water Street location. However, following these consultations, the Pickleball Association has indicated that they do not wish to move forward with further expansion at the existing Water Street location. Their concerns focus primarily around green space and the mature trees, and they have expressed a preference not to proceed with any further development at this time at that location. They didn't want the tree removal or compromise of the existing site to trigger public pushback, and they didn't want it to reflect poorly on them as an organization if that was the direction that we were to go in. And they didn't want it to undermine the positive momentum that the club has been building over the past number of years, and the Pickleball Club has really worked hard on that. However, they do remain fully committed to the goal of establishing dedicated courts for both groups at some point, and are willing to work with tennis long-term in what that might look like. In contrast, the representatives from the tennis community have stated that they wish to continue with the expansion at the Water Street location. And they understand that they need an agreement by both clubs, but that is tennis's wish at this point. And Tennis Club also remains committed to establishing dedicated courts for both groups and believe it can be done at the Water Street location at this time. So as a result of these varying views, we've come up with 3 possible solutions that we think might be possible that I'd like to present to council. So option 1, council provide direction to abandon the review of the court expansion at the Water Street site and direct staff to proceed per the recommendation of the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan. And what that is these are long-term goals. So these are the recommendations where we look to acquire a new site, possibly through land development process, um, example, future subdivision approval. So these are the recommendations that could take a very, very long time. And it includes recommendation number 5, which would explore the feasibility of developing vacant land, town-owned lands for the purpose of addressing interim needs, which could include soccer fields, ball diamonds, so a whole sports area where we could have various sports location. So for context and as a reminder, the vacant town-owned lands that have been considered in both recommendations was thought to redevelop the town lands at Given Road. So that's one of the areas that was talked about when we went through the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan, and make kind of like a rec outdoor complex. However, this is a very long-term goal and would require multi-millions of dollars, and we're just not sure what that looks like long-term. While it could be a really unique opportunity, it's something that's not on our horizon at this point. Option 2 would be begin looking for other town-owned land to develop up to 6 pickleball courts. So we could start looking for other lands within town, which we've talked about at great length. However, the problem with land for pickleball is it can't be close to housing because of the sound that the pickleball makes. There's a lot of complaints. There's a lot of issues now with pickleball courts being too close to housing developments. So that's one of the things we would have to consider as to where that could be. So this could also have a longer term implication. This could be much longer in how long this takes to get to that. We don't know what that would be because we don't know what land it could be at this point. However, we could look at that option in conjunction with option number 1. And option 3 would be continue to pursue the expansion of pickleball at the existing Water Street location. While both groups are not in agreement to that, that could be a third option that we still could consider. So I bring this forward to council because we're now at an impasse. Council's direction is needed to help determine how best to move forward with this. So that is my summary. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, any questions from council? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Stephanie, I have one question that I think is important when I'm looking at all the different options. So with the tennis courts currently, what's asset management plan say before we have to do some major repairs? And I would assume that's court surface or something like that.
The court resurfacing, and I don't want to speak right off the top. When we talked about it, when we did the painting of the courts, we were looking at another 5 to 8 years, I think, for some resurfacing down there because it does start to peel. But I don't want to commit to that. I can send council the exact timeline on that because that was something we did explore with the Rec Culture and Leisure Master Plan, knowing that there needed to be work done down there.
Continue. Follow up. So that being said, when you're talking long-term, does that mean in that prior to that 5 to 8 years, you're going to have an idea of a plan?
So no, not necessarily. No. So we would still resurface those courts. Those courts are still, because the courts crack, the paint peels, we resurface them I think it's every 10 to 15 years is what we're doing right now. So that is still going to be required. Even if we have a second location, we would still utilize that existing space because we probably will need 2 courts. We've not looked at completely mothballing that location across from the quarry right now. that wouldn't be something, because we're going to need at some point to have two different existing racket courts, one for tennis and one for pickleball. So that would be the long-term vision. Whether pickleball goes out Given Road at one point and tennis remains at the Water Street location, that would be another option. But in the meantime, I would still recommend that we still will keep and will maintain the facility until we find an alternative long-term option.
Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Steph, is tennis a more acceptable sport for a residential area than pickleball would be as far as noise and
Tennis is quieter,
Yeah.
but it still does make some noise, but it is much quieter. But then you have to look at if you want to light it. So because we currently have lights there, so I think the expectation would be wherever there are new courts that there would need to be lighting, equally lighting for pickleball and tennis. So that would be another option to consider as well.
So I'm
But
just,
yes, tennis is a little quieter. The pinging of the balls is not as loud in tennis.
so I'm just wondering if it's, not to throw confusion into all of this, but another option could be to keep the pickleball courts on Water Street and find another location for tennis. Would that be easier, do you think? Or, I know I'm just throwing that out as a thought, but
We have definitely talked about that. Our struggle is finding land. So our struggle right now is finding land that would work. So that's really our biggest struggle, is the land, which is why options 2 and 3, or sorry, options 1 and 2 would take a little bit longer, because we know that there's not available land ready to go for us tomorrow. It would be an option. Yes, it absolutely could be an option. We could put more pickleball courts down there, the way we could reconfigure them. Once we would repaint it, and you definitely could do that at that location.
Councillor Pridham?
Thank you, through your worship. I was basically thinking the same thing that Councillor Luna suggested, and yeah, I'm not sure which direction to go myself on this one.
Councillor Edney?
Thank you, through your worship. 1 and 2 are very similar. 3 says that we're going to build something that someone doesn't want, so 3 is off the table as far as I'm concerned. 1 leaves us much more open than 2. Done.
Okay. Any questions from council? Councillor Lucas?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Steph, have we had any preliminary discussions with Upper Thames? Because I look at this spot as your layouts, and I'm like, to me, that is the racquetball area in St. Mary's. We moved the trail over a little bit. You've got to cut down a few trees. Trees don't live forever, so at some point those trees will have to come out. So again, the trees don't bother me. Pickleball losing some reputation in the community, I think is short-sighted on their behalf, but that's, that's their decision. And I still come back to the fact, if either organization wants to enhance their facilities, I think they need to come to us with some sort of a fundraising initiative. But with that being said, I think we could move forward with some discussions with Upper Thames to make sure that this is even in the realm of possibility, because if it isn't, it becomes a moot point. But if it is in the realm of possibility, your infrastructure there, your parking's there, you have no residential in the area, like, it's just, to me, the way it lays out is like, that's where it should go. But again, like I say, unless we've had discussion with Upper Thames and kind of get their feeling on it, we can't really move forward on anything until we know what Upper Thames would say.
So I can add to that. We have had preliminary conversations with Upper Thames, and they were agreeable that this could be an option. No commitments, nothing, because we haven't given them any layout of exactly what the facility would look like, but they were actually interested in it. So that was why we went down this path. We did ask them before we actually talked to the committee about it. And to your second point, both groups have committed to fundraising for whatever it looks like, wherever it is. Both groups have committed to fundraising for the project. They haven't come up with a plan because they don't know where it's going to be, but they have both spoken at length about it. So I know they're on board for that.
Okay. I guess just to follow up on that, like, to me, to do something out on Given Road is years and years and years down in my head, because that's a huge capital expense. And then to create some sort of new racquetball facility with parking and access and all that in a part, it's just like, to me, I don't know when that's going to happen. Like, if anybody wants to increase the racquetball sports in our community in the next 10 years, I think both committees or both organizations should get on board with what we've proposed here. And if that's something they want to go down the path with, I think that's the most reasonable in my mind, for sure.
Councillor Edney, please.
Thank you, Worship. Stephanie, has any consideration been given to the parkette behind the Lynn Sportsplex? To Councillor Lucas's point, it keeps it in that same recreational area. Sure, I understand the grade isn't acceptable at the moment, but it's not something we can't handle.
We haven't given that any consideration. We haven't given any consideration. We've looked at parking in that area more so than anything for the quarry. So no, we have not given consideration to that parkette. And from a space perspective, I don't even know if we would have enough space there. We haven't looked at that at all.
Okay. Councillor Pridham.
Thank you. I guess I was under the impression just that pickleball wasn't interested in fundraising, but it's just the location that they were concerned about. Okay.
It's not even the location they're concerned about. They're concerned about reputational damage about the trees having to be removed. Yeah. That's all it is reputational damage. And I think that's why we're bringing it to council, because at this point, staff are kind of at an impasse. We thought we were moving along quite nicely with both groups, and we thought both were in agreement. But once they had internal conversations, they were worried. As Steph and I have had the benefit of seeing their correspondence, and we didn't put in the agenda. They're truly worried about the community being concerned about the removal of trees and paintable being painted with that light. So the simple way to take the pressure off them is for council to make the decision if you wish for them to go here. So that's it's. To Councillor Edney's point, it's not that I don't think they don't want them here. I think everybody would be happy with additional courts. It's just the concern about, if there is a significant public pushback on the removal of these trees, nobody really wants to be painted with that decision. But that's why we're bringing it to council.
Okay. Councillor Luna, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. With the history of trees in St. Mary's, if they're very mature trees, they're probably rotten anyway inside. So, I mean, and I'm a tree hugger, but losing 3 trees is not a huge concern to me. I think I could go with your first picture that shows 2 additional courts to the west, I guess, of the current courts, as I guess maybe an intermediary 10-year plan kind of thing, and future councils can worry about expanding racket club. So I guess I would put that on the floor, that this first rendering, we would move forward with that. Do we have a cost of that, Steph?
And again, council, just let me help again. So we're not to that point of asking you to pick which rendering. We just want, so with Steph, to move this forward, what Stephanie needs to do next is to actually have real conversations with the Upper Thames that are more than just cursory. And so I think none of the clubs have even really rendered an opinion on which of these 3 renderings they prefer. So tonight we're just asking, shall we continue to work on this project to look at developing new courts here or not? And if the answer is no, then we've those 2 other options are: do you want to follow the Rec Master Plan's recommendations to look at developing 6 courts on vacant land, or do you want to look at some other spots? But if you're saying no, let's continue with the project here, then we'll just continue down the normal course, which was going to be consult with the Upper Thames, and once we've heard from them, you've given us previous direction to work through Recreation and Leisure Advisory Committee and making sure that both tennis and pickleball are at those meetings to then start coming up with like a really good idea of how the site lays out best for you. And then we would collect things like budget, and we'd have all of that. So we don't really have any of that information. We don't really have their opinions on which layout they prefer. We're truly just asking about, do you want us to continue with a project at Water Street, or do you want us to abandon that tonight?
Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I would add option 3 to the motion that's on the that is in the packet.
Okay, so Councilor Luna has put the motion on the floor with option 3. Is anybody else willing to move that motion? Councilor Lucas? Any further discussion? Councilor Pridham?
Thank you, through your worship. I'm just wondering, while you're talking to Upper Thames, if you'll talk about expanding parking at all, if there's an opportunity to push into that space a little bit to allow for more pickleball parking.
Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, through the deputy. I just want to say, I think what you guys have created here is good. Like, I love the kind of the layout of that. It allows you to put in 2 courts now. If another 10 years down the road, there's a need for 2 more courts, you've got the room for it. You know what I mean? You've got all that stuff. So to me, this is a no-brainer.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councilor Craigmile, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I tend to agree, mainly because I think with that life cycle we were talking about, 5 to 8 years, at least we would have a plan and get something going, so that then tennis would have their dedicated and pickleball would have, you know what I'm saying? So if we went option 1, I mean, it could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And nothing, you know, we're going to be no further ahead. So I think we have to get along and get the approvals from Upper Thames and come with a plan, and it is what it is.
Okay. Any other further discussion before we call the question? Seeing none, I will read the motion out first. So the motion is that report DCS 04-2026 racket court expansion be received, and that council direct staff to proceed with option 3 as described in DCS 04-2026 racket court expansion. Councilor Luna moves. Councilor Lucas seconds. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Ishii. All right, next up, we will begin the February monthly report for finance. Mr. Steckley, please.
Good evening, through the Deputy Mayor. So similar to my colleagues, I will keep my remarks brief for my report, as the matters before you have been fully detailed in my report. For the Finance Department, I'd like to note that the town's interim tax bills were processed and mailed on January 28th, with total interim billings of approximately $7.89 million. I would also like to remind Council and the public that the first tax installment is due this Friday, February 27th. Secondly, Council will observe that the procurement activity has been particularly active since the beginning of the year, and this reflects a deliberate effort to ensure that the projects are awarded in a timely manner and in alignment with vendor timelines and the town's internal project schedules. From an information technology perspective, the report outlines a number of operational metrics that are monitored on a daily and monthly basis across the organization. While some of these measures will be familiar to Council from previous reports, I'd like to just underscore that the town continues to maintain a strong and proactive security posture. And you can see this is further demonstrated through the several initiatives completed during this month, including the migration of the firewall management system to a cloud-based service. And this just helps to address and eliminate a vulnerability related to backup access. And then additionally, there were enhancements made to the public Wi-Fi environment by isolating users and eliminating cross-client threats. thereby reducing the risk of unauthorized data transfer between devices. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Edney.
Through your worship, not a question, but a comment. Mr. Seckley, I received an email from you last week to a question that I had asked earlier in January. I made a point of coming in to tell the CAO how unbelievably impressed I was with your answer. It was comprehensive. It enlightened me in so many areas. It was quite a simple question, and there are no questions left. It was just an excellent explanation. So I really appreciate that, because I did rely heavily on the person who formerly sat in your chair, and he always came through. So I really appreciate the answer that you came through with. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the feedback.
Any other questions from council tonight? All right, seeing none, I will seek recommended motion that FIN 05-2026 February monthly report finance be received. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Edney, second. Councillor Pridham, any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Steckley. All right, next is the February monthly report for emergency services with Chief West.
Good evening, Council, Deputy Mayor. Just keep this brief. January 12 calls for service, 8 calls in the previous year. There's a list of the calls there. There was a few officer page outs, so not a full response on 4 of the calls. So that was good. Year to date now through February today, we're actually down 3 calls from last year. It was a really busy February last year, so we are under what we were last year by a few calls. Fire prevention's going very well. Some follow up, looking into some requests, some routine things. Some of our numbers are down a little bit. The fire prevention officer was on holidays, so the numbers are down, but he's back and he's cracking away, and we're doing lots of visits. And he went out to a lot of the industries lately, and we had some hydrants that weren't dug out, private hydrants. There were some doors that were blocked, some egress. So he's done a really good job there. So I think once we knock on those doors a few times, then they won't wait for us next time. So they'll be a little more proactive in keeping their exits clear and their hydrants clear. We're going to be participating in the coldest night of the year coming up. We've got our, every 2 years we do our scrap metal. That's going to come up April 11th. Obviously our breakfast, that's always well attended. That's coming up May 2nd. There's a list of some training that we got up to. We did not make it to Perth County Ingredients. Our tour guide was sick that night, so we did some training here. And just another note, we're doing the first time the fire college has come. So we've been busy at the Stratford Y the other day, and we started with the quarry today. And everybody's all the town staff have been very helpful, letting us use those facilities, and very accommodating. So it's going pretty well having the fire college here, and we have our partners in Stratford Ice Water and Woodstock Ice Water joining us. And through the Deputy Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Any questions for Chief West tonight? All right, seeing none, I will seek a recommended motion that FD 03-2026 February monthly report emergency services be received for information. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Luna, second. Councillor Lucas, any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Chief West. Okay, next is the Human Resources February monthly report. Ms. Knechtel, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. So I'm going to follow along with my colleagues this evening and keep things brief. I just really wanted to share one update, and that is since I did my report, the recruitment has changed significantly. So it has more than doubled. Instead of, say, a half a dozen that you're seeing on the report, we now have 15 positions in process, which is quite typical for this time of year. In comparison, last year at this time, there were 18 positions, and the majority of the ones we're recruiting for actually have multiple vacancies because at this time of year, we're recruiting for summer support, whether that be contract or part-time. So just wanted to share that update because it is a bit different than what's in the report. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Luna.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jennifer, just a quick question about the community outreach worker. Has that position been finalized? I don't think I've seen anything since the resignation of the former person.
Yes, an announcement went out and Jade is in that role.
Yes, thank you. I didn't see it, but thank you.
Oh, no problem at all.
Any other questions? Councillor Craig Mile.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jennifer, when emails are sent out about job postings, et cetera, one of the things I did notice was I saw some job postings, they're only allowing like a week. Is that standard?
It depends through the Deputy Mayor. That's an excellent question, Councillor Craigmile, and it often depends on what type of position it is. So when there are positions, say, at a managerial level or above, we typically post for about 3 weeks. When there are ones where we are hoping to recruit quickly and they're shorter term, perhaps seasonal, they may be posted for 1 or 2 weeks. And that's in consultation with the manager that is doing the job posting.
Okay, and I had one other follow-up question just to help me out when I read those. Is that
sure?
I have never been on your new site looking for a job there, Avante or whatever it is. So if it says that the job posting finishes, let's say it was 1 o'clock today, does it automatically disappear or does it stay there?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, great question. And yes, it does come off at the time when it says it's going to come off.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, I'll seek recommended motion that HR 05-2026 February monthly report, human resources report be received. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Craigmile, second. Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Next up is the February monthly report for Public Works. Mr. Kelly joins us tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allward. I feel like all we did for February was deal with winter and plan for when it's not winter. So lots of snow clearing and then just tender preps to get ready for things. Parks is starting to heat up. We've got a few projects on the go, so we started those indoor projects, and we've received our planters, and things are starting to fill up at the shop, and report is there. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kelly tonight? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Deborah. I was curious when in your report there, it talked about 45 properties having to put some water out. Is it kind of the same ones every year, or are we constantly finding new ones?
Through Deputy Mayor, I think I'll just kick that over to Mr. Blake. He runs that program.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Craigmile, so they are generally consistent year to year. What we do is we have a tiered list. So there's 3 tiers that we will administer based on estimated frost depth and when each property has historically froze. So if you're on tier 1, you generally freeze earlier in the season versus those that would appear on our tier 3 list. So depending on how cold the winter is or how much frost we believe is in the ground will depend on whether specific properties get that notice.
Sorry, to Deputy Mayor. They also catch for road reconstructions. They review that list if the service has to go deeper. So they try and fix them as we get to there, but ultimately this is the best solution right now.
Any other questions for Mr. Kelly? Councillor Lucas.
Just a quick comment. I was headed out to Rannick the other day and I noticed the Queen Street culvert has got a new patch of asphalt on there. So I applaud you guys for sneaking that in there between snow removals to deal with that. So kudos.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor, actually the contractor came back to do that. They still have some, we'll have to obviously tear that all out, redo the base. We paved it in a snowstorm. We knew it was going to be black, and that was our expectations. But yeah, they have to come back. There's sidewalk restorations and there's some sod restorations, and that'll be a full road X to get that back together.
All right, any additional questions? I will say the BIA is very excited about the self-watering pots. I can't wait to see them in action. So, yeah. With that, I will seek a recommended motion that PW 10-2026 February monthly report Public Works be received. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Pridham, second. Councillor Edney, any further discussion? All in favor? Excellent. All right, next up, Mr. Kelly will continue with the award for PW01 supply and delivery of 1 half-ton pickup truck.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allward. So this is just a straight tender award for half-ton pickup truck. This is the finalization of the plan to start rotating the fire chief truck through the Public Works G-Class fleet. So we'll take the newer trucks and we'll rotate those through the key positions in the front. So theoretically, fire chief should probably get a truck about every 4 years, so he won't be in the same situation he is now. So he's a pretty old truck now. In discussion with the fire chief, we're going to order it white and then wrap it back to the fire, which is great. And yeah, and I think it was a nice white Chevy that we got for the fire chief. So yeah.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, I'll seek the recommended motion that report PW 05-2026 award for PW 01-2026 RFT supply and delivery of 1 half-ton pickup be received, and that the procurement for PW 01-2026-RFT be awarded to Finch Chevrolet Cadillac Buick GMC Limited for the procured price of $60,538.04, inclusive of all taxes and contingencies, and that council authorizes staff to sign the associated purchase order. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Lucas, second. Councillor Luna, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Next up, we have the procurement award for well inspection and maintenance program. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This report is a procurement process related to the 5-year cycle for our well inspection and maintenance program. It's would include inspection and maintenance work to well number 1 and well number 3. Normally, we only do 1 well per year when we're in this cycle. However, because we're planning on doing some water tower work in 2027, this is in a response to position the water system to be fit state of repair when that work progresses. We did only have 1 vendor submit for this work. Staff's very familiar with this vendor, and they've almost exclusively provided our well site maintenance to us over the years, and recommend award of the project to International Water Supply.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Blake on that? Okay, seeing none, I will seek the recommended motion that report PW 06-2026 procurement award for well inspection and maintenance program be received, and that council award the well inspection and maintenance program project to International Water Supply Limited for the tender price of $58,760, inclusive of taxes, and that council authorizes the chief administrative officer to approve necessary preventative maintenance activities as identified and recommended through each site's inspection program up to project upset limit of $65,000. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Pridham, second. Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Councillor Craigmile.
Yeah, I should have asked you a little earlier, Dave, but what struck me odd there was that it's almost 50% of your budget, which is very good. Or did Did you expect it to be a lot more? It just caught me off guard.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Craigmile. So the budget was designed in a specific way to account for what we would envision for preventative maintenance work that they identify. So we would have expected the procured budget for the vendor to be in this range, with the balance of the budget being for that identified work, bushings, bearings, columns, motor rebuilds, things like that.
Any further discussion or questions from council there? All in favor? That is carried. All right, next up is scope of work and budget change request for Lystec process pump replacement. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is a report basically to provide a update on what was a 2025 capital budget or capital project at the wastewater treatment plant. We were originally looking to replace a end-of-life cycle asset for the Lystec process pump, which is part of a single stream process related to our biosolids production facility. It had some constraints with it when we were getting into the project. Space is one, rental availability is a second, and production or process downtime for the facility is kind of another constraint down there. And we looked around to see what rental options we had available to us, which there weren't any, to handle this type of material in the footprint that it is. And we also looked at alternative pump manufacturers or vendors, and basically came back to the same conclusion that we have to replace with a similar or same vendor that we currently have down there. But we identified that it's not a like-for-like replacement, just because of when the original pump was manufactured and built. Things have changed on the current model. Nothing tends to line up perfectly. Additional considerations were there. So we're looking for a scope of work change and a budget change in order to facilitate this process that will take into account those identified issues that have been found to date.
All right, any questions from council on that? Councillor Edney.
Thank you, Worship. Not particularly related to this, but I feel like I've seen wastewater and water reserves. We've been pulling from them frequently, and we also had a big project. And this doesn't need to be answered now, but I wonder if we could just see where we're at with that.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Edney, that's something that we can bring back just as a refresher. We generally bring back an updated financial assessment for each system as part of the fee bylaw, but perhaps we bring something back a little sooner. I did consult with our treasurer on this project as well, so I got that verification as well.
Okay. Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think it was important when I asked Dave some questions regarding this, and I'll let Dave explain it properly, but with all the different expansions of the pump and everything has all changed. But if there's a downtime, you need that space and whatnot, because they're limited to about a 5-day repair. I'll leave it with you to, I think it's important that we all understand this.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Craigmile. So yes, just to touch on that. So because it is a single stream process, failures can happen with mechanical components, which does happen from time to time. The facility has the ability to absorb basically 5 to 7 days of downtime by increasing the solids content of the wastewater treatment process. After that time period, basically we have to start hauling off property. So that's basically starting to haul off solid wastewater or thickened wastewater basically off property to a receiving facility. That comes with extremely expensive costs and is something that we try to avoid. And that's why we're looking at doing this preventatively and proactively so we don't have to incur that.
All right, thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Blake? Okay. Seeing none, I will seek a recommended motion that report PW 07-2026, scope of work and budget change request for Lystec process pump replacement be received, and that council authorize the scope of work and budget change for the delivery of the Lystec process pump replacement by $170,000 for a total capital project budget of $355,000 to be funded by wastewater reserves, and that the actual project cost shall be determined by an approved procurement process to be considered by council at a later date. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Luna, second. Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. All right, next up is the capital budget scope of work change for cured in place pipelining.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So similar to the last report, this one is very similar. Basically, we've included in the 2026 capital budget some more cured in place pipelining rehabilitation of our sanitary sewer system. Specifically, we were looking to target the Queen Street East force main, which runs from the Queen Street East pumping station along Queen Street to the Brock Street intersection, where it discharges back into the gravity sewer system. So it captures a large some for the East Ward, and is one of our critical infrastructure components. Since the time that we developed the initial budget, some more information, or we've been able to gather some more information related to the duration of how long it would take to do such a project, open cut requirements, things like that. And basically we identified that the originally approved budget would be insufficient to deliver the full rehabilitation of the pipeline. So what we've done since then is we've looked at alternative options for consideration that'll still achieve our goals of rehabilitating that piece of infrastructure. And one of those avenues is a condition assessment of the force main. So we've looked into some technologies that can deploy basically in situ, so the force main wouldn't have to be taken out of service. You can get a condition assessment of your pipeline, find if you have any vulnerabilities or weak spots, and then basically end up with a much more targeted delivery of your rehabilitation to ultimately achieve the end goal of maintaining that asset in a fit state of repair. So basically what we're looking for tonight is approval to change that scope while working within the original budget for the project. So we would look to basically take that original budget, change the scope to do a condition assessment on that pipeline, and then whatever the results of that condition assessment would then feed into the rehabilitation approach for that pipeline.
Excellent. Any questions from council on that? Councillor Lucas.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Dave, what is the approximate age and material of that particular force main?
Through Deputy Allward to Councillor Lucas. So the sewer went in, I believe, in the late 60s because it went in as part of the Highway 7 diversion project, and then would have come online as the sewer system came online in the early 70s. That particular pipeline is a 200 millimeter or 8-inch asbestos cement pipe.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from council? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So Dave, is this something that we should be thinking of down the road doing more of to identify, or does it do it as it's going to do the repairs? You know, the investigative or...
Through Deputy Mayor Allward to Councillor Craigmile. So just to clarify your, the frequency of inspections, it would be something that proactively would be a good approach to be doing more frequently as the system ages. That's not to say it needs to be done every year or 5 years or even 10 years, but maybe as some level of frequency to ensure we're catching leaks or deterioration as they occur. We are able to do inspections on some of our pipelines, but not all of them. So we do have a 4-inch force main in service that services the Robinson Street area. That one's too small to do condition assessments on. So we're looking at alternatives for that one because it'll be a similar vintage, similar age. And then the Emily Street pump station, is a newer force main, so it's not quite at this age level yet, but might be something that can be taken advantage of with a condition assessment, because it's kind of a one-stop mobilization from what we've been gathered, that you might be able to do more than one force main with a company.
Any further questions from council? Okay. Seeing none, I will seek to recommend a motion that report PW 08-2026 capital budget scope of work change for cured in place pipelining be received, and that council approve a change to the scope of work for the 2026 cured in place pipelining project to include a pipeline condition assessment of the Queen Street East sanitary sewer force main to be funded from the originally approved 2026 budget for cured in place pipelining, and that council direct staff to update the scope of work for this project to apply pipelinings on those sections of pipe on Queen Street that are the most needed based on the findings of a pipeline condition assessment. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councilor Lucas, second. Councilor Pridham, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. All right. Next up is electric vehicle charging station information report. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is based on a comment that Mr. Wolf received during the last monthly report update. We thought we'd pull some information together. The portal is pretty easy to work with, so it's pretty easy to pull together. So currently we have 8 ports for charging across 3 locations. PRC has 4 level 2 ports. So that gives you a charge in about 3 hours, as I understand it. And then we have 2 at Jones Street, and then we have 2 at the train station. Largely, they've been installed through grant funding. The VIA, I think, was more grant funding, and that was via rail initiative. And then the last one was the ZIP funding that we participated in. Utilization is pretty low. It's at 2%. So we get about a charge, like someone takes a charge every second day, 1 or 2 a day maybe, if we're lucky. But the one thing that we did notice in the data, like half the charge accounts are new users, so that would be potentially visitors. We do have them set to kind of break even for the hydro and the maintenance costs. The biggest thing, the maintenance cost, is if someone decides to cut the cable. The cables are about $600 a piece, and I did check with Kent, and they're about $4 worth of copper. So, but there isn't much copper in them. So there's aluminum in them and stuff like that, but there isn't as much copper in them. But they're breaking even. I don't know, we have not accounted for the biggest thing, I guess, from an asset perspective, and maybe it's a field of dreams scenario. You just have to kind of build it, and hopefully they come. But we have not accounted for the asset replacement cost of these. So we're just kind of breaking even on the rates. So information is there. I'll take any questions.
All right. Any questions on this for Mr. Kelly? Councilor Lucas.
Thanks, Deputy. What's the approximate lifespan of a charge? Do we know that yet? Like, we have no idea.
To Deputy Mayor, I have a little bit of experience with technology in previous life, so I'd be surprised if they're around in 15 years. Just because we see, and it's a little bit better on the industrial side, but we even see it on the wastewater side, components age out and it's proprietary and things like that. So, you know, the good news is they are effectively 240 volt, 30 amp circuits. So you just replace the gas post basically and just put a new one on. So the infrastructure's there. So that part, the hard part, I think would last, 50, 70 years or something like that.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Kelly? Councilor Edney.
Thank you for your worship. That's more of an observation, but I think because of the nature of electric vehicles prior to where we're at now, we knew that in cold weather, long distances, all those things were a factor. So it didn't surprise me at all to see that the majority of these were going to be visitors. And I think anyone in this area who had planned to buy an electric vehicle probably had an at-home solution as well. So I think long-term, great, we have eight stations, as tourism improves and whatnot, and as the vehicle becomes more adept at our Canadian weather, I think we'll see an uptick in that. So I don't know if that's your same thinking.
Through Deputy Mayor Alwood, I personally think once the I'm going to go off a little bit of tangent here, but this is Jed's opinion. But you asked. So I personally think that we missed a step. So we tried to do internal combustion engines, and then we had hybrids, and then went to EVs. The federal mandates are EV, 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 right? I don't know if you've ever driven across this country, but it takes you a day and a half to get over to Ontario, and you can be flying, and it still takes you a day and a half to get over to Ontario. So I personally think the plug-in hybrids might be the tipping point. So, and the reason I say that, like plug-in hybrid or long-range EV where you have a gas generator, the problem with EVs is it's an energy storage problem. It's a chemistry problem. There's a lot of energy in a liter of gasoline, right? So I think as we see more manufacturers move to the plug-in EVs, the longer range EVs that have the gas motors, that sort of thing, I think these chargers will, charging infrastructure will see an uptake. But I think that's the piece that we missed fundamentally as a country. So, but that's just, I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and yeah. So, but that's my own personal opinion. But I think as manufacturers bring those other products on, because I personally would think like a plug-in hybrid would be perfect for me. I probably would fill up, once every 2 months. I drive around town a lot, but I need that range every once in a while.
Cool. Any further questions for Mr. Kelly? Okay. Seeing none, I'll put the recommended motion on the floor that report PW 09-2025 electric vehicle charging station information be received for information. Councillor Edney, Councillor Craigmile, any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. How's everybody doing? Do we want like a recess, or are we just trying to carry through it? Just bolt through it? All right, we're hitting our stride. Let's keep going. Next up is the West Quarry project update number 3. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is update number 3. I'll try to explain this the best way I know how. Had many conversations with Jeff. This was his project, and he left it for me. So he did explain it on the way out. There was a Jeff-shaped blur out the way out the door, but he did explain it too. So overall, the project is progressing to clean up the site. We were successful with the Torque partnership. The way that Torque grant funding is, it's a little different. There's no funding agreement. We don't get a check from them. Basically, we just surrender the site, and then they were going to take our unit rate contractor, and they'll start the removals. So we've had discussion with them. They're figuring on a maximum upset limit of 2,000 cubic meters of material. And then we've also discussed with them, they said if we get the clean filled material down to the site, they'll place it for us. So if we get clay, so say we had 2 feet, if we put a foot of clay in and then we'll put a foot of topsoil, they said if that material's there, we'll place it. So we, when we're developing the budget, I think Jeff didn't really have a lot of information on how that worked. So we have this pot of money, but we'll have to do some work first. So I think from our perspective, we'll be looking at screening some yard waste compost from the landfill. There's some good material there that for final landfill reclamation. We know we're going to be in the landfill business, so it'll be fine for the 2,000 cubic meters, and we'll have to bring that down first. Sorry, let me just go through my notes here. So we will have costs to prep it, and then once it moves into the Torque cleanup, they'll kind of take over with our contractor. We have a unit rate contractor system where we put our contractors on a roster, so they'll probably take the low bidder for a dump truck and an excavator, and they'll go through. We're probably expecting that process to take 2 to 3 weeks, so they're okay with those costs. Let's see here. So if we go back, water quality testing, that was consistent. It's good. No issues to report there. The bathymetric analysis revealed that there's very few hazards in the water, but they're about 3 meters down, and that can be dealt with signage. So that's not a concern. So overall, there's no constraints that we see to the site that would prevent use of the water specifically. Construction timing, I probably jumped ahead a bit on that. That's going to start in May. We want to get that. We want to mobilize and be out of that site before the quarry starts their season. We will be looking at a closure to the trail. We're going to need a lay-down area, so we'd probably be closing either end of the quarry. We'll remove the fence. We'd start some brushing some scrub out. There was a diagram on page 112 of the agenda that kind of shows kind of what we're thinking about. Once we hand it over to Torque, they'll be removing the concrete, the steel waste, and then we're going to try and regrade the banks where we can. Ultimately, we're trying to look for that 4-to-1 grading. 3-to-1 will take, and then anything more than that, you're probably going to have a fenced hazard. There's some areas that'll be a drop-off that we can't deal with. We'll have to look at some sort of fencing. Probably envisioning something like more like a lookout thing like you see at the mill race. That kind of guardrail, that's kind of our standard. And then we need to get a direction on the pillars. So maybe, do you want me to take that, Amy, or you?
So I can just close the loop. So Jeff and I have been working on this since the delegation came before you in November. So one of the recommendations out of that was to explore any of the smaller components and whether those could be saved or preserved in some way. So Jeff and I did a walkthrough of the site and did take an inventory. So there are 19 smaller remnants down there. And our opinion is that none of those can viably be saved. So some of the concerns we had is the geographic spacing of them. So they're quite sprawled out. There isn't a nice tidy cluster that we could fence off appropriately. We also felt that they, being lower, are more of a climbing risk or a little bit more of a climbing temptation than the taller ones. So in exploring that option, we did look at it quite seriously, but did not feel that that was a viable option. So again, we're kind of just looking back at whether council wishes to keep those 6 pillars in place and explore some fencing options for those. Jeff did reach back out to the delegation. They used the word stabilize, which we were a little unclear what that meant, because we did not want to be necessarily going back into the purge and repair option. And so they confirmed that stabilize just simply meant fencing them off and allowing them to degrade over the next several decades, centuries, kind of whatever that may be. Anything else? Public engagement?
Yeah.
I can talk about
Yeah,
that.
sure.
We clearly rehearsed
Yeah.
this. So I did also just want to speak to public engagement. So phase 1 would simply just be communicating that, hey, this work is happening. There's going to be a service disruption with the trail. And really, phase 1 is just simply communicating that we're doing a cleanup down there. Phase 2, we're looking at later in the fall, and that would be more once the public has got used to the space being in its kind of cleaned up state for the summer, and hopefully would be able to better conceptualize what could be in there moving forward. So that would be a fall 2026 endeavor, and we'd be looking at bringing something back to council in early 2027 to guide that project.
Yeah, so I guess we just want to be perfectly clear about what we're going to get in 2026. So we'll close the trail, we'll pull the fence down. The diagram that Jenna had up there, we'll brush out the areas. Some of the areas we're going to have to brush out just to find the hazards. So it's going to be kind of difficult. I know there might be some blowback on tree preservation and stuff like that. There is a lot of invasives and there's a lot of buckthorn, things like that. We would be trying to brush that out and then bring in a finished turf as much as possible to the water's edge. We'd have some sort of, where we have those drop-offs, we'll have some sort of temporary fencing, or we'll restore the fence that we had. But we've been looking at some temporary fencing options, potentially maybe some construction fence or some kind of event fencing or something like that with signage. So we're gonna have kind of this interim period where we have lots of, we'll have it graded, we'll have it topsoil, we'll have it hydro-seeded. Might not look the best, but you should be able to restore that vision to the water from the trail. Obviously, I think, like in my opinion, I think if we had that vision that you can see, because right now there's a lot of areas to hide, and I think that's why we get a lot of cuts on the fence and things like that. I think we have that indirect supervision from the trail. I think a lot of that kind of malicious use might drop away. certainly the kind of the grotto end, the southern end, it kind of, I think we can get better grading there. Jeff thinks we could get better grading in there so that, we have a rendering of it in the council package. But it is going to be at a bit of a design build situation as we get into it. And I think what the ultimate goal would be is, remove the hazards as council's identified, regrade where possible, and then restore as much turf as possible, and then leave it somewhat in a blank space for 2027 considerations, the public consultation, what they want to see with the site. And then we could also potentially, if it is kind of a blank slate and service clubs want to get involved, or if there's some donations from estates or something like that, like there would be some nice picnic area opportunities and things like that to enhance the trail. So, but it's going to be a bit of a design build, leap of faith 2026 project.
All right. Any questions from council? Councilor Pridham.
Thank you, through your worship. I'm just concerned about the bathymetrics report, and on there it says there are 8 hazards, and they're declaring 8 hazards, and we've knocked it down to 2 locations on one side and 2 locations on another. Why were the other 4 not considered hazards, in your opinion? And why is the people that are coming in, whatever, Torque, or whatever their name is anyway, why aren't they taking care of removing the hazards in the water? Oh, I can tell you what page it's on if you want. I think I can. Well, in all of their reporting, they've got locations for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hazards.
Through the deputy mayor, I believe the ones that are on the water's edge, I think that we could potentially do some removals with the excavator. We'd be able to get in there and remove those. And then some of them are in the middle. Like if you look at location 2, there's an old rail trestle, so that's just not physically viable to remove that economically. But it is, it's 12 feet deep. It's 2 or 3 meters down.
Well, I thought it said.
It says 6 to 10 feet down, I believe. Depth, yeah, 3 meters, 2 meters.
Yeah, 3 meters.
Yeah.
Some of them are 1.1 meter.
And that is that shallow locations. Sorry, that is limited to the southern end. So you still have the north end that you could use for water-based activities.
Concerned because a group came to us and suggested there be some like wakeboarding, that sort of thing. And if we've got something that's 2 meters under the surface in the middle of the quarry, that to me would be a hazard. And they're declaring it a hazard, so I think that would kind of constrict the water use depending on what the use was.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, absolutely. So you're looking at buoy lines, you're looking at warning signage, that sort of thing. You'd have to delineate where the hazard is, but absolutely. Mm-hmm. So this might be only suitable for, this area might be suitable for this, but this area might be suitable for that.
So why wouldn't
Your microphone, Councilor Pridham.
Why wouldn't TORAC be responsible or not responsible? Why would they not be assisting us in removing those things?
Through the Deputy Mayor, so this project is somewhat different than the scope that the TORC usually deals with. So usually they deal with like open pits. So they have an open pit and they turn it back into a reclamated field. So they're totally filling it in, right? So they're willing to partner with us on the industrial uses from the mining activities, but we said, well, we don't want, we want the water. So that was kind of that was the difference in this project. It's effectively a different scope than what they're used to. They like the project of, reclamating it and making it more recreational use, but yeah, so we said that we were kind of more interested in assistance with the visible hazards. The water is, not really part of the scope for them.
Okay, any other questions from council? Councillor Luna.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to be clear about the pillars. There's, what was I just reading? There's 6 that are not believed to be at immediate risk of collapse, correct? So can those 6 be fenced? That's just my simple question, for $40,000.
Through Deputy Mayor Albert, I believe so. We would have to clean up the area and then get a design scope, but that was the $40,000 was the initial estimate from BM Ross to fence that area. So right now it's you know, it's kind of a napkin quote. It's their idea. It's, you know, we think we can do it for this price. Could be less, could be more. I suspect it's probably a safe number in that we'd be able to accomplish it.
And so on a go-forward basis, they would be fenced, if they would be fenced potentially, and just left to crumble in the future without any further dollars being invested by the town in these pillars, correct? So it's the same price, basically, as completely removing them as fencing them, according to this report.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please answer.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Luna. So yeah, these are the numbers that we were provided with last year through BM Ross. So yes, that fencing option was potentially less than complete removal, just based on the ranges they gave us at that time.
Councillor Edney.
Thank you, through your worship. So just to clarify, how I kind of saw that was, if we choose the fencing option, and to Ms. Coverly's point of, you know, over decades, the first option actually comes back into play, because at some point we will have to remove what's crumbled and the fence, I assume, as well. So yeah, I had a question about whether these prices, like complete removal leaves you with simply complete removal. There's no ongoing upkeep and whatnot. The other ones will have ongoing upkeep, correct? I mean, if we're going to sink $300,000 into hardening, we're going to do it every so often, correct?
So through Deputy Mayor Albert, I believe, the way I understand it is the pillars aren't, the 6 pillars aren't in any immediate danger of falling down. They obviously, though, are degrading in place. I think part of the issue is when you have people swinging off them and stuff, that exasperates the degradation. So potentially it is 6 and 1.5 dozen the other. You could fence them. They could be up there until nobody in this room is walking the earth anymore, and it could look exactly like that. The wrought iron fence, there would be an operational upkeep to it. If you look on page 102, I think we were envisioning something like that, where you have in Europe, that's how they let these things degrade. That would have to be painted, you know, every 5 to 10 years, depending, right? We have some of that wrought iron fence. There's some of the cemetery and things like that. We have to paint it every so often, but it wears like nails, so it's not too bad from a maintenance perspective.
Continue. Yeah.
In stark contrast to my comments last year, I actually think it could be quite beautiful. It could add a lot to that area. And this picture was certainly of great help too, if it was something like that. I guess I would just want to see how much is left, you know, of the pillars. If there's enough that we don't look ridiculous saving a third of a pillar, a quarter of a pillar, you know, that type of thing. So.
Through Deputy, I know the 6, if council decides, we would just leave those outside the scope. We'd clean the brush out of them, but they wouldn't be touched.
So we have to make this decision tonight? Do we have to make a decision on the options, or do we wait until after the brush is cleared and then? So we have a better idea of what it will look like.
So Torque has made it fairly clear that they don't want to include the removal of the pillars in the scope of their work on the site. So they will clean up around them, but wouldn't remove them. So yeah, I guess to that point, a decision doesn't necessarily have to be made tonight about this.
CAO.
Maybe. Because remember, we've always been talking about a trade-off of, do we get rid of the big pillars or save the small ones? And so if council's decision tonight was to keep the large pillars, all the smaller ones would be removed based on staff's recommendation. I guess just sitting back and listening and being the benefit of all the information I have, I don't think there's any harm in you making a decision tonight. I think we've heard from BM Ross before and from your staff that all of the large pillars are salvageable. So even if you clear out the brush, everything that's large would remain. Everything that's large and visible would remain.
Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Deputy. So option 3 refers to the 6 larger pillars. And to Councillor Edney's point of being expense down the road, I don't see removing them down the road. I see just leaving them fenced and with the plaque that's there, or an additional plaque that these pillars were saved by this council and whatever. I don't see that there's any further expense except maybe to the fence, which is minimal, I would think.
Councillor Craig Mile, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. After doing some personal walking around that location yesterday, it became quite apparent to me that the 6 tall structures, although there was some parging on the outside coming down, it did look solid. It's in an area where the grade is very steep, going from, once you get a couple of yards off the trail to where the fence is, down to the water's edge. So I really believe you're going to need some sort of fencing there anyways. So, the fencing is going to be, I think you're going to need it in around that location anyways. And if you, make a walkout or something, you're still going to need the fencing. So I'm not sure that the fencing is going to cost anything, because I think you're going to need it there for some sort of safety once you get to that location anyways, because it is steep.
Yeah, through Deputy Mayor Allwards, yes, absolutely. There is sections that, due to the drop off, you will have either plantings that will discourage, access, or some sort of lookout fencing. And I'm going to point to the mill race, something like that, some sort of fence like that. For YD 26, we could potentially, when we're done the project, we would probably just have construction fencing around the pillars for now, in the short term, until we finalize the fence quote. I don't know all the costs until I get in there. I suspect there might be a bit of meat in the capital budget to do something with the fencing, but I don't want to speak out of turn until kind of the dust is settled.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Councillor Pridham?
I guess just a concern for the people that like to swing off of those pillars. How high do we need this fence? Does it need to go into the ground? Is it going to be something that they can't just snip and open and access?
Through Council Albert, I believe some of that will be resolved when you have that indirect supervision, that when you open up those areas from the trail, you'll be able to see. So I don't think it'll eliminate it all, but it might help.
Councillor Edney?
With all that having been said, I would support option 3.
Okay. So, Councillor Luna? Yeah.
I would support option 3, but with the addition, just to make it more clear, with regards to the 6 pillars, to the 6 large pillars, I guess, on the site. We're not talking about the small pillars.
Correct.
So just to make that clearer. And I will second that motion.
Okay. So we have the motion on the floor. We have a mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion before we call the question? Councillor Lucas.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Amy, can you explain to me the makeup of those pillars. They're not a stone structure. They're a very early concrete structure that is currently crumbling. Is that?
Yes, so to the best of our knowledge, they would date from the very late 1800s, possibly early 1900s, and would be like a very early concrete structure. So no, they're not a like limestone block like Town Hall is.
So I guess I appreciate the delegation that came out, and I appreciate all the history, and we're going to rehabilitate the quarry. So I guess my thought is, if we want a reminder of the industry that has created this town, it would be the quarry itself, which we're not proposing to fill in. We're proposing to expose and make it look good. So I guess I can't get my head wrapped around leaving crumbling concrete in that. So that's my opinion.
Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Councillor Lucas's point, but the alternative is option one, to completely remove them for a greater cost than the fencing. So that's where I was okay with removing them until I saw the actual prices that are suggested. And if we can fence them and keep that part of the history for less than completely removing them, or equal amount of money for completely removing them, it makes sense to fence them to me.
Any further discussion before we call the question? Yes, Mr. CEO, please.
Yeah, sorry. And I've kind of reflected on the resolution that's been proposed since the time of writing, and speaking to the Deputy Mayor, spoken to the Deputy Mayor about adding a further that statement in there that staff report, that whatever option you choose, that staff report back on the timeline and budget funding to implement the option that's selected. And the only reason I say that is it could very well be that the best time to fence these is while the cleanup is happening, while the site's already disturbed. And the other concern I have is, from the staff level, our biggest concern with the large pillars has been the fact that they're an attractive nuisance, that people climb them and jump off them. And so if we clean up the site, it's only going to make them more accessible. So it's in our best interest to fence them as soon as possible after the site's cleaned. But we don't have information tonight for you on those final cost of fence. So Jed would have to get those, and he'd have to talk and think about whether in his project plan fencing them right away makes the most sense. But I do think it's worthwhile for council to add that statement in your resolution as a friendly amendment, that that staff be, written it down for me, that staff be directed to report back on the timeline and budget implications of the preferred option.
So my apologies, I was looking for the right time to sneak that in. Is that akin to what you two are seeking? Yeah. Did you want to, you can read it there if you like, Councillor. Okay, so I'll read the motion as it stands now. So the recommendation is that report PW 11-2026 West Quarry Project Update Number 3 be received, and that council direct staff to implement option 3 with regards to the 6 large pillars on the site, and report back to council on the timelines and funding options to implement this option. And that staff report back with the findings of the public consultation for council to consider potential future uses of the site in 2027. So we have Councillor Luna and Councillor Edney moving that motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. All right, next up is award for PW 10-2026, supply and delivery for a wheeled excavator.
What's that?
Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Allward. So this was approved included in the 2026 capital budget. This is a replacement of the cemetery backhoe. It is kind of an all-wheel drive swing arm unit that we have now. It is 20 plus years old. I think it's a 2001, so it's done its full pull. It is getting worn out pretty bad. through discussion with staff, we're looking at a wheeled excavator. The one thing about St. Mary's is we're geographically small, but the idea of being able to drive an excavator on site, I think it's really going to open up our operational capability. We are under budget. We completed an RFP, staff did an evaluation. 2 of the units were found to be too big for our application, and as such, we're recommending procuring the Wacker-Neuson to Coleman equipment.
All right, any questions for Mr. Kelly on the wheeled excavator? No?
Oh, I should add, it is yellow. Like the Tonka twice.
Excellent. Okay. Seeing no questions, I will seek to recommend a motion that report PW 12-2026 procurement of a wheeled excavator be received, and that council awards the purchase of a wheeled excavator to Coleman Equipment, Inc. for the tender price of $190,405, inclusive of taxes and contingencies. Is somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Lucas, Councillor Pridham seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. All right, I have nothing under emergent or unfinished business. I have no notices of motion. Under upcoming meetings, we have March 10th, regular council, March 17th, strategic priorities committee, March 24th, regular council. Would anybody like to add anything? Councillor Edney, please.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. One of our local businesses is presenting a Canadian music celebration on Saturday night, and I suggest that anyone who appreciates Canadian music should probably come out. It's at the Legion. So.
Excellent.
Children are free, and it's $12 for adults.
Excellent. Anything else for upcoming meetings? I will just provide a quick shout out to the soup crawl going on tomorrow night downtown, 6 to 7:30. There are 15 participating businesses. The winner gets the Victorious Glorious Spoon and a nice little plaque for your business for the year, as well as you can win a little soup bowl from Zenfire if you win the participating draw. Beyond that, we are at the confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation is that bylaw 08-2026, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this meeting, be approved by council. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Luna, second. Councillor Edney, all in favor? Carried. And adjournment. So the recommendation is that this meeting be adjourned at 8:25 p.m. Somebody willing to move that motion? Councillor Edney, seconder. Councillor Pridham.